In Peru, elections are still a way off, but the path to 2016 is already littered with tangled tales of corruption. Two likely candidates, both former presidents, are being investigated for fraud. Another candidate is the daughter of a former leader currently serving a sentence for corruption and human rights crimes. Even for Latin America, where the United Nations says corruption is endemic, this marks a particular low. As due process runs its course, Dan Collyns takes a look at whether justice can be served in Peru.
These images of corruption are still fresh in the memory of Peruvians. Vladimiro Montesinos, then the closest advisor to President Alberto Fujimori, filmed himself handing over wads of cash to the owners of Peru's most important TV networks. In the end, these were the images which brought his decade-long rule crashing down. Fujimori is now serving a 25-year jail term for human rights crimes and corruption. But he's back in court on trial for allegedly siphoning off $40 million from public coffers to bribe the tabloid press to support his re-election. His daughter and political heir, Keiko Fujimori, has been accused of receiving campaign funds from a convicted drug trafficker. To avoid the scandal, the former presidential candidate has promised that her party will return the money. But corruption allegations have also tainted Peru's last two presidents.
Sueño con un Perú.
Alejandro Toledo was the leader many credit with restoring democracy after Alberto Fujimori's decade-long autocratic regime. But he's now accused of getting rich illicitly. More than $6 million were frozen in a Costa Rican bank account that belonged to companies linked to the ex-president. The account was allegedly used to transfer some $5 million to Toledo's mother-in-law, Eva Fennenberg, who used it to buy two upmarket Lima properties. Inside this, the new Omega building, is the office which prosecutors allege was purchased by Alejandro Toledo's mother-in-law. The former leader says she was simply investing in Lima's booming property market, and the allegations of corruption against them are false and politically motivated. The accusations went all the way to Congress, but Toledo insisted it was a conspiracy.
I want to clarify before Peru that these are false media reports which affect my honor, my family's honor, and my credibility. That is why I'm here, Mr. President.
Former President Alan Garcia is also accused of using illicit funds to buy a home. He's accepted he purchased the home worth almost $1 million, but says the money came from speaking engagements and book sales. But Congress has created a commission that is investigating the money's origins. It's alleged one source could be the pardoning of up to 500 convicted drug traffickers. Prosecutors allege that President Garcia may have charged $10 million for that. Like Toledo, he claims the accusations are politically motivated to keep him out of the 2016 election race.
The illegality of this summons shows that this supposed commission and this investigation have political conditions dictated from the government palace to prepare other electoral plans which align with the aspirations and desires of those in power.
Current President Ollanta Humala says this is damaging the country's image abroad.
It worries me that ex-presidents are either in jail or being investigated. I won't give more opinions, but it's not a good image for Peru, this situation. I hope we can first treat the ex-presidents with respect in the same way that they should behave respectfully towards the law and the investigative proceedings. Eventually, if there are charges, then they must proceed. After all, no one here is wearing a crown.
Peru's recent boom has made it one of the world's fastest growing economies. But for many, the taint of graft and business-as-usual politics is holding it back.
If you look at the data about Peru, you see a significant improvement in the Global Competitiveness Index big score from 73 to 61, which is huge in 3 years. But if you disembowel that thing and look for what's good and what's bad, you find they're number 118 in deviation of public funds, worse than Zimbabwe. They're number 89 in transparency, worse than Nigeria. They're number 132 in business costs of crime, worse than, Albania.
Despite Peru's red-hot economy, corruption is preventing it from becoming a developed nation. In fact, Peru's Comptroller General, Fuad Curi, can say how much it loses to graft.
It's around $3.6 billion per year, around 2.2% of the country's GDP. But there's still a lot of poverty. We are a country which has grown for 13 years in a row. There have been years in which we've grown at 7, 8, or 9%, like China. There's this idea that with growth, there's less corruption. That's not happening in Peru.
It affects business, foreign investment, and perhaps, most of all, people's faith in democracy. It's Peru's central democratic institution, yet polls indicate that most Peruvians don't trust the elected officials inside it. They regard them as at best mediocre, at worst criminally corrupt. Peru's single-chamber Congress is one of the country's least trusted institutions. And with 2 former leaders under investigation and another in jail, it's not hard to see why the drama has done nothing to improve the rock-bottom reputation of Peru's politicians. But the mere fact that ex-presidents are being investigated for graft is a step in the right direction, says Peru's anti-corruption prosecutor, Julio Arbizu.
One realizes that we are doing our job impartially because they all hate us. That is to say, we have the resistance of all the political parties. There is not just one which is saying we are doing our job badly or that we are biased.
A Chinese proverb says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's Peru's struggle against corruption making those initial strides. Corruption, from bribing a traffic policeman to robbing from state coffers, impacts on quality of life. Peru's growing middle class may be less willing to tolerate it. But despite a backlash, graft may be seeping back in, says Arbizu.
I believe the Peruvian case is unique in the world, if not the region. There was a criminal mafia installed in the government which assaulted every state institution, but we defeated it. I don't doubt that. The problem is that traces of that corruption have remained in several institutions and they are feeding off each other.
But Peru may not yet be turning a page on corruption, says Curi.
We're looking carefully at the page, understanding it, taking note of the damage that corruption is doing as we prepare to attack it head-on. We're in the strategic planning stage, and we're ready to try out a different model.
Surveys show that graft is so commonplace that most Peruvians don't see the point in reporting it, despite government programs supposed to make it easier. But thanks to the hard work and commitment of a few, the country has taken at least the first step on that 1,000-mile march.